Hello and welcome to Darkside Scenics. It's been a while since my last video, but with work and family commitments and also the nice weather, the modelling's taken a bit of a back seat. I have made some progress, but it's been quite slow and I've made lots of mistakes along the way, which you'll see in the video. It got to a point where I needed some inspiration, so I set off for the Bristol Model Railway Show to see if that helped. While I was at the Bristol show, I was very pleased to reach 12,000 YouTube subscribers, so I wanted to say thank you very much for that. If you don't already subscribe, please do click on the button, and I'll try my best to bring you some hopefully informative and useful videos. Thank you. This is one of 3 large halls at the Thornbury Leisure Centre in Bristol, full of exhibition layouts and trade stands, so plenty to see. I didn't manage to get footage of every single layout, but I got a good range and it was enough to give me some inspiration. It was really nice to bump into Mark from the South Devon Railway and also Derek, who I'd spoken to online. Both of them have given me some really useful help and advice. I also finally managed to meet Martin from WWS. I've used his products for several years now, so it was really great to have a chat with him and also to catch one of his demos. I knew while I was there I would have to get myself 3D scanned at the Modelu stand. The figures they produce are really fantastic, and I'm looking forward to placing the miniature version of me somewhere on the South Devon Railway layout. Alan, who scanned me, and Chris, who very kindly filmed it, were both really helpful and friendly, so it's definitely something I'd recommend. Once the scanning was finished, it was just a case of waiting for my unpainted figure to arrive in the post. All the details are on their website, and they also offer a painting service through Tunnel Lane Model Railways if you want a really professional paint job. And here it is, a 25mm tall version of me ready for painting. I popped back onto their website to have a look at their catalogue, as they have a guide for painting in there. The first job is to gently remove the support struts, so we're just left with the figure on the base. I start off with a flesh tone from Ammo, which is slightly diluted. While that's drying, I can move on to blue for the jeans. Then a small amount of brown for the boots. This isn't the exact colour they recommend in the guide, but it's basically a sand wash which helps to pick out the facial features. And again, a colour close to what they recommend. This is saddle brown, which is watered down quite a lot before adding it to the face. Lots of people use a black wash here to pick out the details, and I'm going to try that with some other figures as I try to improve my painting skills. And this green is a fairly good match for my Dark Side Scenics hoodie. I added a very small amount of black paint to the blue and the green to make washes, and this just helps pick out some more of the detail. And the final part, as recommended, is to dry brush some buff titanium over the top. This is really effective, especially on jeans, but I think I overdid it slightly on the hoodie. Before starting work on the track, I thought it would be a good idea to create a test board. I made a simple timber box and then painted it black. And then some cork trackbed was cut to size, ready for gluing. I'll be installing Pico bullhead track on the entire model, and this picture just illustrates the difference between Pico bullhead and standard Hornby track. This is a very useful tool from Pico, which allows you to create the correct spaces between the tracks. When I was happy with the position, I could glue down the cork track bed. It was weighted down overnight and then left to dry. The next step was to focus on joining the rails. The rail join is quite small, but with a bit of patience they fit really well. It's recommended that a small gap is left in between the tracks to deal with heat expansion. Here I'm cutting away some of the plastic ready for the dropper wires. Filing the rail will help the solder to stick. After the dropper wires are prepared, it's time for soldering. The end of each wire is tinned before being attached to the rail. The position of the wires is marked on the corkboard ready for drilling. After the wires are fed through the holes and I'm happy with the position, I can move on to gluing. This is quite a simple straight piece of track, but to ensure there are no kinks in it, I use this track setter template. And then it's weighted down and left overnight to dry. The excess track is trimmed using these DCC Concepts rail cutters. Any gaps can be filled with a loose sleeper and a small amount of glue. And a quick test with this coat shows that everything is running as it should be. There are lots of options for spraying the tracks, but I'm going with dark tracks from Ammo. And as an experiment, I'm painting the rail chairs with a lighter shade of rust from Vallejo. This is really to help separate the colour of the sleepers and the rail chairs, but I'm not sure it's really necessary. There are lots of different ways of ballasting track, and it seems to be one of those jobs that everyone hates. One of the issues is that the sharp edge of the cork track bed can show through the ballast, which is why I'm putting a layer of glue on it here to ensure it sticks properly. Sanding down the corners of the cork track bed can also help. I thought this grey blend from Woodland Scenics would be a good fit, but I won't really know until I've weathered the track. You don't want any pieces of ballast stuck to the inside of the rails, so running this old wagon over it just clears the path. A fine misting of soapy water is sprayed over the entire model to help break the surface tension of the ballast. This is followed by a generous coating of Scenic cement. I'm trying to work out if this will work on the actual model, so I'm going to add some grass and some earth. The earth texture is given a final spray of glue before being left overnight to dry. To match the Scenics on the main model, this is 2mm European from WWS. This is followed with some layering spray and some WWS dead grass. Weathering powders do a great job of blending in the different scenic elements. The black weathering powder gives it a used look. I'll need to compare this to the real thing so I can make the necessary improvements. After looking at these close-up photos, it would be interesting to see in the comments section what techniques other people would use. Now the model is flipped over, I need to spend some time practicing my wiring skills. For the bus wire, I'm using this relatively cheap cable from Halfords, and this is a tip I picked up from watching Chadwick Model Railway. Now they're cut to size, I can look at attaching the bus wiring tags. I realised shortly afterwards that I needed to face the tag in the opposite direction due to the position of the drop wires. To enable the bus wire to feed through the tag, it just needs a small cut. This is a test board, so I'm going to give each track its own set of bus wires. The dropper wires are the first part to be soldered to the tag. And then the bus wires. To tidy up the cables, I picked these up from my local DIY store. These connectors from DCC Concepts will be used in between the modular boards to connect the power. I've had this Z21 starter kit for several months now, but I've only really used it just to see if a train works. The Z21 track power connector is wired into the female DCC concept block. This will make it much easier to connect and disconnect. There's quite a lot of paint, powder and scenic material all over the tracks, so it's given a quick clean up with a track rubber. And after turning on the controller, everything seems to be working fine. This gave me some basic practice for the main layout, but it will get slightly more complicated with points, point motors and signals, etc. This is where I started to have some problems. I'd made a bit of a mess of the edge of this board, so I had to take up the cork, level it up and then put some more cork down. A small piece of cork was put on the joining board just so I can work on the track joint. And I knew where the track needed to go on the Staverton section, so I started to glue some cork down. I inserted some pins here so the cork holds its curve while the glue dries. After marking the position of the rails, I could drill some pilot holes for the brass screws. I'd read in several places that soldering the rails to brass screws was a really good way of joining the boards. I found these brass screws in my shed. Well, I thought they were brass anyway. One of the good things about this method is that you can make very slight adjustments to ensure they are the correct height. The heads of the screws are filed down slightly to help with the soldering. And the rails are soldered either side of the board joint. The curve on the joining board is quite sharp, so I'm cutting the cork board down the centre as it makes it slightly easier. I'd done so many things in the wrong order here, but I carried on in the hope that it would be okay. So a section of track was glued on each board, and then they were soldered to a screw on either side of the joint. Then it's just a case of cutting the rail directly above the joint. A quick test with the wagon indicated that the joint was smooth. At the other end of the joining board, more of the cork was glued down to line up with Staverton. And the same process was followed as before with the brass screws. These holes are for the dropper wires. I was struggling here to get the solder to stick to the screw heads. Putting aside my cheap soldering iron and my lack of soldering skills, I think the main issues were these. I didn't use any flux, I don't think the solder I was using was correct, and also the brass screws were not actually brass. When it came to cutting the rails, they just fell off the screw heads as if the solder wasn't there. Due to the complete mess I made of this job, I pulled up all the track and then moved back onto Scenics. This joining board was simply a way of joining Dartington into Staverton, so I had a little bit of artistic license here. I wanted to pick out the best parts of each board to blend them together. This lower part is a small section of river which joins in with the Dartington board. The high wooded area at Dartington drops down to the track level so it blends in with Staverton. This is my usual method of adding earth texture, which is a mixture of brown tile grout and woodland Scenics fine turf. The excess powder is hoovered up, and as usual I managed to scrape the surface of the riverbed with the hoover. After it's been sprayed with soapy water and Scenic cement, there are some areas which need a little bit more of the powder. Basing glue is added in patches ready for the base layer of the static grass. In the woods at Dartington there's a small area with some ornamental pixies and gnomes. This small patch will be my version of that area. The area I'm spraying here will be full of trees, so I'm just going to add some woodland ground cover. As shown in episode 2 of this series, the fine leaf foliage is added to the riverbank. In my thatched cottage diorama I used some gnomes in the garden, so I picked up some more of these from fine scale figures. The faces are painted in a flesh tone, and then when that's dry I follow it up with a wash. The clothes on the gnomes will be painted a variety of relatively bright colours. The gnomes are left to dry while I add some more seafoam trees to the bank. Most of the trees are very easy to insert into the Celotex base, but the ones at the bottom need to be drilled as they're going into plywood. As the trees are built up, you can see how the track winds through and it helps transition one area into the other. The gnomes are glued in place using a small amount of Scenic glue. And now, as you can see from the board attached, I need to add some polyfibre and leaves to the bank. I'm gluing leaves and other scatters to the polyfibre here, but there will be some further Scenic work to be done to add some brambles and bushes. A dam made of masking tape is added to the front of the board and also on the join. A thin bead of glue ensures it's absolutely watertight. "24 hours later I mix up some deep pour water murky to match the existing river scene. I left this to dry for 2 days before peeling off the masking tape. And I scraped off some of the slightly raised sections of the resin. The ripple effect is created with gloss Mod Podge and an airbrush. On one of the May Bank holiday weekends, the South Devon Railway hosted their Rails and Ales event. As you can see, the weather was fantastic, so I had to book a ticket and go along to the temporary pub based at Staverton. The event was really well attended, and they're doing another one on the August bank holiday weekend. After a quick drink and a look at the river from Staverton Bridge, I popped onto a train to go to Buckfastleigh. It gave me another opportunity to get some footage of the areas I'll be modelling. I picked up some supplies from the model shop, had a quick walk around the Buckfastleigh station site, and then got back on the train again, ready to return to Staverton. I managed to get some good close-up footage of the water tower from the carriage. When I returned to Staverton, I realised that I really wanted to include the Bishopsbridge signal box, which wasn't included on my initial plan. As I was investigating other ways of joining the track across the boards, I came across these excellent Model Tech ProTrack rail aligners. I would have liked to have used these, but unfortunately a lot of the joins I have are on a curve. Eventually I settled on these DCC Concept sleepers. I decided that having 3 sleepers either side of the join should be strong enough to hold the rails. I'm going to be pinning these, so I had to drill a small hole at either end of each sleeper. I opted for the flat-headed gauge master pins as I thought they'd be easier to hide. Once I'd set the position of the sleepers, I glued them in place before pinning them. The dropper wires are fed through before getting the track in the right position. The track is temporarily pinned and weighted down while I deal with the soldering. This was so much quicker and easier for me to deal with, so I was actually happy with the end result. After cutting the rails, the track on either side of the join seemed really strong. And it meant I could separate the boards. More rail was joined to the Dartington section, and I used a mixture of gluing and pinning to hold it down. This wagon ran over the joint without any issues. I had more confidence in my ability to deal with this method, so I carried on with the other side of the joining board. And these parts were also tested after cutting the track. As shown in the test track earlier, I could start to add the electrics underneath the actual boards. The same process was used, and you can see here one connector block being fed through to the connector block on the other board. The layout is currently 14 feet long, and I just needed to run a test to make sure it all works correctly. If you like the videos on this channel, please do hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really is appreciated. Thanks very much for watching.